I'm gonna say good afternoon, everybody, and welcome again. So my name is James Coda, and so I just want to welcome you all to our live Q&A today. And so we're going to listen to Heather's presentation, or we're going to speak with Heather regarding her presentation, helping ITAs improve their vocal variety. And so today on our agenda, so what I'm just going to do is first, I'm just going to describe or give a little bit of information about Heather, just to remind everybody. So our speaker's bio, and then our presenter will briefly summarize her presentation that was available on the YouTube channel. And then finally, we will have our live Q&A. So any burning questions that you all may have, we will be able to discuss those during that time. And I'm just going to ask if you do have questions, and currently we have 12 people here, and we will most likely have more that will join throughout this. And so just if you can raise your hand so that way I can keep a track, or do the raise your hand feature rather, so that way I can keep track of who is asking questions, and that way everyone's questions can get answered. All right, so let's just go ahead and begin. So Heather Bolt is the director of Emory University's English Language Support Program. And so that's a program that offers courses, workshops, and consultation for international graduate students. Heather has over 20 years experience teaching in a variety of academic settings, predominantly with graduate students, but also with pre-matriculated students, undergraduates, and postdoctoral fellows. Heather is also a past president of Georgia TESOL and a current board member, of the Consortium on Graduate Communication. She earned her MA in Applied Linguistics and TESOL from Georgia State University. So without further ado, Heather, can you take it away, please?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay, super. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you. Sorry about the camera issue. Yeah, so I guess I can assume that everybody has watched the video. How about you give me a thumbs up if you watched the video? Oh no, one person said no. All right. Two people said no. Okay, so I think what James said is then a great idea. I will give you a little brief overview of it. I'm going to share my screen, make sure I'm in the right place. Do you guys see the cover page? Okay, great. So, and there's something in the chat. Okay, sorry, I didn't. Okay. So the way this came about was that Sarah Kegley, who I see is here, who we spent some time together at Georgia State. She lives in Atlanta with me and is one of my favorite people. Go Sarah. She saw me present, I think, at Southeast TESOL or maybe International TESOL, about some work that I was doing with mirroring many, many years ago. And she thought it would be of interest to this group. I don't know how many of you have this. Oh, well, I've got my thing. If you've got the new Pedagogical Innovations in Oral Academic Communication book, there's chapter, I was just reading chapter 5 in that book, and Susan Barone and some people at Vanderbilt, they also do some mirroring with their students. So I'm thinking that maybe some of you do as well. And if you have, I'd like to hear from you. We can share with each other. But basically what I shared in my presentation was that we often have students like this particular student who said, let's see if I can annotate. Well, I guess I can't annotate, but the students who reach out and say, I feel like I'm too monotonous when I give presentations or when I lecture. You know, I'd like to be more expressive with my voice. I know that that can help me communicate meaning. And so the way that you can do that is through shadowing or through mirroring activities where they're using, you know, a native speaker or a advanced non-native speaker model. And that advanced non-native speaker model as a model can be very aspirational. Like, I'm going to speak the way they speak. I'm going to try on these different aspects of suprasegmentals, like pausing and thought grouping and focus words. And I'm imitating somebody who's good at this, and I can start to try to apply that type of those aspects of speech in my own voice, right? So through shadowing or through mirroring. So I explained in the presentation what mirroring is, and I gave an example. It's a short example, so maybe for the two or three of you who haven't seen it, this might be all you need to get the idea if you're unfamiliar with it. Let me just play this video. And then I'll open it up.
We are taking a first step towards one. You see, researchers a breath analyzer, and it works like an electronic nose, sniffing out human breath for the presence of certain molecules. And that's important because medical researchers have discovered that specific combinations of molecules in human breath corresponds to diseases like cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and more. Wouldn't it be great if diagnosis of these diseases were as simple as breathing into a tube?
But we are taking a first step towards one. You see, researchers have been working on something called a breath analyzer. And it works like an electric nose and sniffing out human breath for the present certain molecules. And that's very important because medical researchers have discovered that specific combinations of molecules and human breath corresponds to diseases like cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and more. It would be great if diagnosis of these diseases were as simple as breathing into a tube.
Okay, so that's a student mirroring, and this is an example of what the student did to get to that point. Analyzing a short segment of the model and noting it for all the aspects of clear speech, including gesture. So this is a great way to teach how gesture can communicate meaning and enhance the message. I showed a few more examples. I said that I use 3-minute thesis competition as a model because I work with graduate students and they get really excited about seeing other graduate students do this. But of course, you could use any speaker model that made sense for your student population. And then I think the last thing that I said was something new that I had learned, which was that, you know, what's next? Does this really transfer to a student's speech, like that original email? Doing these types of activities, does it really help her deliver a lecture that's less monotone? And you know, I think it does because they're trying it on and they feel confident because it's an imitation and they can start to understand how these aspects of speech work, and maybe they can start to notice it more in other speakers, and then they can start to do it. So I think it gives them some partial control. And then one thing that I learned from a recent presentation from Myers and McCurdy is that what they have their students do is, after mirroring activities, have them take a short section of a lecture or a conference presentation and imagine that they're speaking it the way that their model spoke it. So it's almost like acting, and you know, so channeling that speaker that they think is a very great presenter and applying it to something that they themselves have written. So yeah, that was that's the 3-minute version of my 20-minute presentation. And yeah, questions, comments, complaints, concerns.
I just want to say that was an excellent summary.
Oh, thank you.
Summary of your 25-minute video. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I see Eric has his hand up.
Yeah, hi Heather.
Hi.
I did watch the video. I wasn't indicating that I didn't. I was trying to give you a thumbs up earlier. Anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed it and found it very useful. One question I had was, I haven't taught pronunciation and speaking in a while, especially, yeah, and when I did, it was on Zoom, so that was, you know, but I have had in previous classes a situation where with lower level students trying to get them to start gesturing, and I've had some students just like go overboard and they think, you know, they need to gesture all the time. And the first video you showed, the 3-minute, the American girl, I thought she was gesturing a bit much, whereas I thought your student was like virtually perfect. But my question is, how do you, what do you tell students about how much to gesture? Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a great question. And I completely agree with you that one, that some students don't feel comfortable doing this. And two, some students take it overboard and it feels unnatural. I think that same is true for when we teach students about sentence stress and focus words and things like that. Like you know, sometimes they, you know, we'll have a student after we've kind of gone through thought grouping and focus words, and their next presentation, they're like, today, what I want to share with you is, I don't know, my take on that with that is to often, I'll say, you know, you're trying it out. It's a little exaggerated. I think over time, it'll sound more natural. But, and you guys please disagree with me, but also I think maybe overemphasizing is better than not emphasizing at all. And then to speak to the gesture piece, with the mirroring, if they choose not to gesture, and students will say that, like, I can't do all those gestures. And I agree with you. There's, especially with the 3-minute thesis, because it's that public speaking that's a very unique type where they just got the slide and their voices. It does seem like it's a little bit more exaggerated. So we'll have those conversations, like what you just said. I'll say, yeah, that one seemed a little bit much to me. You know, maybe you can just make a smaller gesture, or just analyze it, do the focus words piece, do the thought grouping piece, and leave off the gestures. So I give them that freedom, but I think it leads to also lots of good conversations about what's too much and what's not, and how it's different speakers have different styles, and they need to find something that they feel comfortable with. And sometimes students will feel more comfortable not with like what's the beat gesture, you know, like today I would like to talk to you. Sometimes the first gesture they'll feel comfortable doing is like the representation gestures, like there was an increase in something and there was a decrease in something else. So I feel like it kind of gives them, oh yeah, the 1 and the 2 and the 3. And so it kind of gives them a small doorway into how gesture works with meaning. Did I answer your, okay, I'm getting thumbs up. And I see some questions in the chat. I wanted to look, I have students pick some key focus words and practice gestures. Small hand, okay, great, Sarah. We were channeling each other. We were saying kind of the same thing, start small. Did anybody want to answer Sarah's question? She said kind of what do other people do in terms of teaching vocal variety, teaching thought grouping, focus words, gestures. Cynthia.
We were talking about overdoing it and exaggerating with gestures. I like to encourage them to overdo and exaggerate, at least for a bit, because I think that's the best way to really feel it, to really see it. For mirroring, for shadowing especially, I tell them, look for cartoons with voice actors, because cartoons, everyone speaks like that, and they overdo, and everyone is so excited to do that when it's really overdone, because I think you overdo for a bit, and yeah, maybe you will overdo for a bit and it's gonna look funny, but I think it's part of the process until you find a good balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see a lot of heads nodding. If anybody wanted to add anything to that, yeah.
I have a couple things I do, not so much for them to improve their gestures, but just to get that rhythm. There are a lot of things I do, but you know, sometimes I like clap on the, you know, to have like just a small talk. What are you doing this weekend? I'm going to the store, you know, and they feel it's weird, but I had one class that really enjoyed it, and I think it helped them a lot. And plus, you know, singing songs is such a great thing for rhythm. And I started doing I'm Just a Bill. You all remember that? I'm just a bill on the Capitol Hill. But the ITA students, even the very advanced, said it was so helpful, you know, and sometimes clapping or just, you know, beating on, you know, and then trying to maintain conversations using that pattern. But it's nice to have songs that are like slow ballads or more of a talking style, you know, because they don't really want to sing, most of them. So, but I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, okay, I see Eric has his hand up. That made me think of like Linda Grant used to do, you know, like the high five on the stressed syllable, or the kazoo, or like moving forward as you say the stressed syllable. I know that I think it's Colleen Myers does the thing with the eyebrows, which I found so fascinating. And students, that to me really shows, they love that. When they notice that, they're like, oh, like, and it really kind of drives home like how connected speech and body are. So yeah, and I was, when I first started working with graduate students, because I worked with like students in an IEP before I transitioned to Emory, I thought like, oh, these graduate students, they're older than my typical population I've worked with before, and everything's so serious, everything needs to be academic. They love the high fives, they love doing all those kinds of things, you know, that like so I completely agree with what Cynthia Denise said. Yeah.
Oh, you know what I did in the past with the songs is they did a follow-up where they picked an English song and I had them like type it up and underline the stressed, and then some of them accidentally recorded it, and I told them you don't, but now I'm having them record it, not singing, just speaking, you know. So it's like every time I look in the mirror, you know, whatever song. I have a list of rock songs and songs like Tomorrow and by Annie, you know, but they can pick a song or they can pick any song, I don't really care, but I actually had them record. They're like, really? I have to record a minute or two of it, you know, but they're speaking it, but it really does help the rhythm a lot.
Yeah.
This,
Yeah, Eric had his hand up, so.
Yeah, there's this book, probably most of you know it. It's Reinhardt's Giving Academic Presentations, and he or she has on the second page that I shared there a group work where, you know, there's 12 sentences and they all call for different gestures, and they can do that in little groups. And then the other thing that I found useful is, you know, sort of anonymous or non-anonymous peer reviews on their presentations, like a question like gesturing was, you know, and give them a rating, you know, write them too much, too little, and then tally how many people said each, and that sort of gives them some sort of larger audience reaction as well to, you know, but I totally agree. At first, you know, I encouraged them to exaggerate. I was just wondering if you had sort of a, you know, a magic number or something, like, you know, 30% of your comments should have a gesture. So I don't know if there's some magic formula out there that I wasn't aware of.
I don't know a magic formula. Maybe somebody does, but that made me realize. And Eric, thank you. I've never had gesturing on my peer feedback, but I'm going to add it. I think that's great. So they can see, you know, how they're being perceived. And but I was going to say that made me also think that I sometimes, when I first start talking, and I also want to say that, like, my point with the mirroring and the shadowing is not like, it's not about the gestures, right? It's about the other elements of clear speech, like the suprasegmentals. But we do talk about gesturing, and when we have a unit or two, not a unit or two, but, like, you know, a couple of class activities in a presentation class devoted to that. And I found some research that I'm happy to share. I think it might be a little bit outdated, but I found this really cool research that some person had analyzed, like, the amount of gestures per, like, 10 seconds of speech or something. And I'm bad with numbers, but it was like, it's a very impressive statistic, you know, like, for certain cultures like ours, you know, gesturing just is a part of the way that we talk. And when students see that research, they're like, oh yeah. So maybe it is something that I want to at least try to do it in some small way. Any other questions or about any pieces of? Sarah Emery, not.
Hi, I did
hi.
watch your video. I love the mirroring activity, and so I'm always excited to see how other people are doing it. And I can't remember from your videos. I wanted to ask, do you encourage your students to pick native English speakers, or do you have them try to identify somebody to mirror based on other components, or just any of the 3-minute thesis? So I just asked that because I've found 3MT to be a really great resource to get a variety of versions of English, but sometimes I get pushback from students that only want to mirror certain speakers. So I was just wondering what your experience has been with this challenge.
Yeah, so I've gotten some pushback too, but I always am careful to say, and I think I said this in the presentation, I don't honestly remember, that, like, I'm always careful to say about shadowing, like, it isn't like the instructions aren't mirror a native speaker of English. It's mirror a clear communicator of English, that you like the way that they speak, like you like their speaking style, and you think that their vocal variety makes their speech clear. And then, so I put that out there, and I actually say the word like aspirational model. This can be an aspirational model for you. Choose somebody from your same native language background if you'd like. You can think, if they can do it, I can do it. But then I leave it up to them. And sometimes they would rather just choose somebody from their field of study. Like kind of a secondary purpose could be that they're like learning some vocabulary from their field of study, right? I've only once or twice, and we've been doing these kinds of things for many years. I've only once or twice had a student pick a model that I thought, this is not a good speaker. And then I, just talked to them about that and said, I think you can find a model that's clear, because I don't even have, I'm having a hard time following this person. Does anybody else, I know Darina has a question. Does anybody else want to talk about that, like native versus non-native model? Brenda put in the chat, find someone, try it on. If it's comfortable, take it, but make it your own. Yeah, that's great.
I've heard recommendations before to pick someone with like a similar vocal range as yours, because if you're really trying to mimic the intonation that they have, it can be easier if it's someone with a, like if you have a really high voice and you pick a model with a low voice, that sometimes that can be a little challenging. I haven't really found that to be an issue with my students, but it seems reasonable.
Yeah, that, sometimes students say, do I need to pick somebody of my same gender? And I typically say no. Again, just choose somebody that you feel comfortable imitating. I don't know if anybody else has thoughts on, like if it makes sense what Jody just said about range.
Teaching intonation, I think it's really important to the student realize that American English has such a high range, and especially the male students do not start at their normal pitch where they are with their native language, but to go a little bit lower. So it's like, I'd like, so if it's like, I'll just have them say, everyone tell me it's nice to meet you in your language. And they kind of look at me funny, but I'm like, it's nice to meet you, and the sincerity, because, if I speak French, it's a much higher range than in English. And so it's important for them to kind of get, because sometimes they'll imitate American intonation and they sound like little girls, and they're not quite getting the low and the high. They're kind of going this range instead of where it's really natural for them to be. So, and especially for men, I think, so it's, I think that's really important. And I think it's something often overlooked too.
Yes, I've had students, male students, say they feel uncomfortable with the pitch changes. And so, my typical response to that is, we don't want to force you to do anything you feel uncomfortable with. So you can just use the lengthening of the stressed syllable instead of doing the pitch. It's just important that it sounds different from the other words so that the key information jumps out to your listener. And I think that really frees them up to, not try to, sound like you said, like a child or something like that. Okay, Darina has been very patient. She had her hand up. So let me see.
Thanks, Heather. I'm not turning on.
I said your name correctly.
You did. Okay. Thank you. I'm not turning on my video because I'm not sure about my internet at this point. But thank you, Heather. This was very interesting. And I had watched Colleen's session at TESOL a number of years ago, where she did something similar, but with picking someone, just giving a speech. So it's interesting to think about the 3MT. But my question was, do you have to make sure that they have a certain level of language proficiency in order to be able to do this exercise, or does it not matter when you do this with your students?
That's a great question. Our students tend to be in the intermediate high to advanced range on the oral proficiency interview. So I've, I do wonder if this kind of mirroring would be more difficult for somebody who was lower than that. Like, when I first started working at Emory, like, well, I don't want to say how many years ago, 15 years, 16 years ago, we had a lot more students in the lower intermediate range. And we did these types of mirroring activities with sitcoms. And we were just much more involved in the choosing of the model and the choosing of the language. And we limited it to like 30 seconds. So I think you just need to adjust it for your level of student and have more control if they're lower level. But since our students are, pretty good and are getting better and better, I don't know if other of you who work with graduate students have seen that, but like, we're just not getting low level English speakers like we did 20 years ago. Yeah, so with our students, it hasn't been an issue, and I've been able to like let them choose a minute, which, and a minute to mirror can be a lot, but they can handle it.
I think
Yeah.
I've done the gesturing handout and certainly suprasegmentals and things I've done with the intermediate students who are still working on some basic pronunciation and suprasegmentals. I think the key is to they would have to have simpler models than like the 3-minute thesis. And one thing that occurs to me, I introduced a session or two on small talk, making small talk, and I found some videos, ESL videos on YouTube of people doing small talk, or other ESL videos where people are speaking more slowly and maybe with less sophisticated vocabulary that may be good models for this.
That's great, Eric. I wrote down email Eric for the small talk video. So be great if you could share with us.
None of them were super fantastic, but they're a start.
Yeah, as a starting point. I've often thought I wish I had like a bunch of different videos of small talk and group discussions and those kinds of things. Thank you. Anybody? There's in the chat. Oh, so Jody is saying shadowing seems to work well for independent practice, and mirroring can be really fun and effective for class presentations. And yes, I often ask students, like especially between semesters and stuff, where I'm sure this is not, I'm sure this will sound familiar to some of you, but a lot of our students that work in labs, the only time they're speaking English is in their courses, and in their labs, they're speaking their native language, and at home, they're speaking their native language. So when there's going to be a long break where maybe they're not being, using English at all, I'll remind them, like, you can do some shadowing activities, or you can do some mirroring activities, or you can do like the 3-2-1 technique. I don't know if any of you use that 3-2-1 technique with their students. This is okay. Sarah says, what's 3-2-1? So I got this from somebody at Boston University. Her name was Lynn. I can't think of her last name right now. I'm happy to share it with the group in a minute.
Bone Steel.
Say what was the name?
Bone Steel.
Yes. Oh, wow. Yeah. So 3-2-1 is basically, it's for fluency. So like you think of a story, like, somebody says to you, how was your weekend? And you tell the story and you speak for 3 minutes, then you listen to it. What words did I need? And what could I and then you re-record it and you try to get it down to 2 and you try to get it down to 1. I mean, I always say it doesn't have to be 3, 2, 1, but you're just practicing the same story and you're getting more fluid and more accurate with each retelling. So I'll say, you know, do that a couple of times over the break so that at least you're speaking some English. I think it's good for independent study. I'll pop it in the chat.
I just wanted to
Yes.
mention too with
Yeah.
the language level question, it seems to me that because in the shadowing and mirroring activities, you're really isolating the stress and intonation, the suprasegmentals. Like the student is not having to come up with the language that's already there for them. And so I feel like if anything, it's a great activity for students who are on the lower side. Like, you know, if you have a multi-level class, I really feel like it can work very well across levels because you've reduced the sort of cognitive load by basically giving them the script to work off of. So you're isolating the skills for them, which I think is great for lower level students.
Anybody else have thoughts? I'm having trouble posting the document in the chat, but if anybody wants to email me, I'll send you the 321 that I got from Lynn. And I've added, like, this is how you can use it for fluency. This is how you can use it for grammatical accuracy. This is how you can use it to develop vocabulary. So I kind of gave separate instructions for different purposes that students might have. Denise has her.
Yeah, me again. This is just, I'm really interested in reading about that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have students do like a 1 minute, maybe you've done this, where they stand in a line, they do a 1 minute presentation, or I just pick a small talk topic and then they just talk about it for a minute, but then they rotate and they repeat the same conversation with the new person, and then they repeat it. And they're so amazed by the third time, you know, how much easier it was to talk about whatever it was, weather, sports, you know, just repetition. And we do it all the time. We tell our same stories. So I think it's important that they have a little bank of stories, kind of like to prepare you to go to a party. You have this little bank. And so I've even conversation classes just have people repeat the story, and then the next class they repeat the story to another person and to another person, and then it becomes something they can hold on to for, you know, when they need it, right?
Yeah, and that just gave me the idea that that would be a good way to introduce the 3-2-1 technique as an independent study. So do it a couple times in class and say, see how much better you got. Okay, now you can do this on your own at home anytime you want to. Right? It's like an artificial way to practice with you and your phone.
You know, they could even think of it as a warm up before they teach, before they go to an event.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
I'm just gonna put on my
Mhm.
timer for 1 minute and I'm gonna speak English without stopping for a minute, like kind of like when you warm up before you exercise, you know. And so because it gets them thinking in English and using their vocabulary and such, so they don't have to switch. So suddenly.
Yeah, and I mean, these are things that native speakers should do as well, right? I mean, like I spoke at an event before this event, and on the way there, I was like saying, you know, my name is Heather Bold, and I'm blah blah blah, and I'm like going over it in my head, and you know, I mean, maybe that's just me, maybe I'm crazy, but I always have done it numerous times in my head. Covert rehearsal, yeah, that's Wayne Dickinson was the covert rehearsal. Yeah. James, I don't know on time. I'm not sure. Was this supposed to be an hour or 30 minutes or?
We're going till 2 p.m.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So you have plenty of time.
Okay. No, I just didn't want to keep people.
Yeah. No, you're totally fine.
Okay. Did you have your hand up again?
Yeah, I don't want to hog the time if people have questions, but I'm wondering what, if any guidelines you give students when they choose their own model video. Do you say, you know, look for this or avoid this, or?
The only guideline really is, find a speaker that, for lack of a better word, that speaks to you, that you like, you think, oh, I wish I could present like that, and then I often encourage students, like I said, encourage them to consider finding a very intelligible speaker of their own language, which with the 3MT, as somebody said, is so easy to do now because there's so many videos. I've even had students find somebody in their field of study with their same native language background. And with the 3MT, I also encourage them to choose winning videos or finalist videos, because then you know that something about that presentation spoke to the audience.
Is there a particular trove of 3MT videos that you found, or just a general?
Yeah, no, if you go to the 3MT University of Queensland website, then they have a showcase, and it's through Vimeo. But so the 3MT organizers themselves will identify every year what they think are really. So I'm glad you asked that, Eric, because yeah, sometimes I'll say if you really don't care about field of study or anything like that, just go to the showcase, because those are ones that out of the 10,000 videos that year that the 3MT organizers saw were the most stellar. Yeah, and then the other thing, if you go to YouTube and you type 3-minute thesis business, or 3-minute thesis chemistry, or 3-minute thesis winner political science, I mean, they get lots of choices. So that's another reason I like it as a model. It would give, if you're wanting them to choose, it gives them a lot of choice. Do others have ideas about kind of guidelines for choosing? Maybe, as someone said, if the speakers are maybe not quite as proficient as maybe my student population is.
I'll add that Georgia Tech keeps their, I guess every university keeps their own, right, online somewhere. So if you want to give them in their own schools or in their own departments models from that campus, that might be a great idea too.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. I forgot to say that I often, when I'm introducing the 3-minute thesis, because in another class we have students, so we use the 3MT a lot in our classes. We use it for mirroring. We also use it for them to try to come up with their own little 3MT type talk. And because we work with postdocs, so they have research that they're doing that they can talk about in that way. I always start off like introducing the 3MT and talking about the 3MT, and then showing examples of Emory winners. So I feel like it's like a little bit of like, sense of place, connecting it to our local community, and they get a kick out of seeing, other people on campus given those presentations. And if your university doesn't publish it, like we do, we used to just post our winner. Now we post all of the finalists, and I'm part of the 3MT team that runs it for our university, and we made that change because it's a great tool for any of the students who participate in the 3MT to put it on their LinkedIn profile, or to tell potential employers, hey, you can check out me talking about my research on the Laney YouTube channel. That's a little off topic, but if your universities don't have
It's a good idea.
3MTs, I highly recommend it. I think it's been it's one of our favorite pieces of programming every year in the graduate school.
Heather, do your students ever mirror their own professors, or is that too dangerous? Now a lot of them are, have videos online, so it seems
I
like
haven't, no, I love that idea though, in a way. I mean, yeah. I had a student tell me, like, whenever I present, I try to present like Peggy. Peggy is one of our instructors. So that was funny to me. They're like, whenever I present, I just channel Peggy.
that's great.
I like that idea. So it's the same idea, just finding somebody that you think is a good speaker and emulating that. Any other questions or comments or people, something that you'd like to add? Oh, there's something in the chat. Oh, good. Jody shared the link to the 3MT showcase. Yeah. Oh, and Jody has her hand up.
I was wondering, does anyone, Heather or anybody else, have good recommendations for sources of, it could be things for shadowing or mimicking, that's not like a formal presentation, that's more conversational, or maybe a meeting setting where people are talking back and forth? I have always struggled to find good models for students with these kind of like anything other than a presentation format.
I don't, and I love that question because I would love to have those as well. Yeah, and people will often bring that up as a criticism of mirroring a 3MT or mirroring a sitcom, because it's not authentic speech. It's a different type of speech. It's not everyday speech. So maybe somebody in the audience can save us. Maybe somebody has a good source. Sarah.
I can't save you, I'm sorry, but we have some models like behind our like in our Canvas sites where we've had some interviews that we've done, like where we've gone in and done interviews with like international teaching fellows, or we've done like panel conversations. And we also have video observations from classes, both recorded in live classrooms and also from online classes. And so what I've been trying to do, and something I'm working on this summer, is getting more of those types of resources and clipping down into like a 5-minute chunk that people can use for this. So yes, it's hard to find models, but I do think that we see there are a lot of different types of panel interviews and things like that on YouTube. So like sometimes I like putting keywords into Youglish and see if I can find, like, just go through quickly for panels to find things, or I tell students to do that if they're looking for something that's less formal. So I don't have anything where I could just send a link, but I do think that especially after the last couple of years, we might have more resources than we realize just in this space.
What website did you mention, Sarah?
Youglish.
Youglish. Never heard.
Youglish is a really cool website. It essentially scrapes YouTube for closed captioning and transcripts and ties it to keywords, and then it gives like pronunciation advice. So if I wanted to look up procrastination and I typed it in, it would take me to the exact place in a video where somebody's saying procrastination, and then I could click through and just see dozens of examples. And sometimes I have students do that tied to field specific content to see models of how people are speaking in their field or how they pronounce certain things.
That's really cool. So that's just like the word you and then glish. Youglish, like, is that how it's spelled? Like Y-O-U?
I just put it in the.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, no, it's. I saw Cynthia nodding. I learned about it from the ITA group. I don't know who started sharing it, but I love that site and I use it constantly. I've only ever like had one word that I couldn't find on there, and that was like mechanochemistry. And so wow. Like you can pretty much find any word.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think I heard about Youglish at a TESOL a couple years ago. And it's one of those things where you're like, you write it down and you think, oh, this is great, I want to check it out. And then I totally forgot about it until right now. So we'll check it out now.
Yeah, for me, I used the Youglish for myself, just to learn how to pronounce words. But also at the same time, I was teaching TESOL, that's Center for English as a Second Language, and I shared that with the students, and they really liked it. But also, in addition to the pronunciation, I found it very useful for collocations. Like I would do like the first 10, 15 months and to see what are the common collocations that seems coming in, and even the context. So the adjective, nouns, collocations, nouns, adjective, collocations, whatever it is. But also I start thinking about like the field. Is it more political science? Is it more anthropology? Is it more like history, literature, and so on? I think that also like a good hint for me, even to start thinking about that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Yeah. So I think 1:55. So I guess we should wrap up unless anybody has a burning question or something they'd like to share. Well, I really appreciated your attendance, and I got some great ideas here. Yeah, so thank you. Thank you, James and Sarah, for inviting me.
Thank you, Heather, for doing this. I think what was nice about it is it's something so practical that we can see your setup and just go, you know, and we do a lot of talking together with our ITA group, but then we all have to go back and work it out somehow. So this is like, yay, it's right there. So that's why I was really hoping you would do this for us.
Oh, well, thank you. And I want to be more involved with this group because we've changed kind of the format of our program, and we're going to be trying to do more support for ITAs. Yeah, so I'll be reaching out, trying to get you guys expertise.
Awesome.
Like Sarah, I think you guys you'll observe the ITAs in class, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how common that is.
Do others do that?
Do others do that? We have 3 minutes.
Once my program gets huge, I won't be able to do that.
Yeah.
Should be huge.
Oh, there's people in the chat. Yeah. Do it by request only. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that like, yeah, but offer it as a service for students who would like that. So who said that? Sarah? Yeah. Okay, Sarah. Okay.
Sarah,
Sarah,
we do observations only by request, but we do have micro teachings in our class where we have undergrads come and give feedback in it. So they have like a low stakes practice, but if they're actually teaching, any instructor can ask for a video observation or an in-person observation.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. I may reach out just to get some tips from you. Yeah. Okay. There's 2 other things in the chat, and then we'll sign off. Oh, just thank you. We don't list. Oh, unless the department requests it. Okay, that's interesting as well, because I could offer it to the department chairs or the advisors. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I see head nodding. Okay, that's a great idea. Yeah. So kind of almost like an intervention then, not like a complete service, but yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Heather. And thank you all for attending today. And I will send out the recorded or this recording to the listserv, as well as I will post it on the My TESOL ITAIS page. So look forward to that. Again, thank you all, and especially thank you to Heather. So I'm going to give you a round of applause.
Thank you.
All right, I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
You too. Thanks.
Bye.
All right, thank you. Bye.